part of that is to hopefully show that grazing on CRP lands can improve soil health. So we're doing a 3-year study. We're 2 years into it. Next year will be the end of it. And we looked at ungrazed CRP, grazed CRP, crop ground, and perennial pasture. Current regulations say that you can graze an area once every 3 years, and you pay back the NRCS 25% of the annual payment that you get from those. So that's not an issue for me, but what the problem is the dates that you're allowed to graze, and those are based around pheasant nesting dates. So the only time you can legally graze CRP is April 1st to May 15, and then again August 2nd to the end of September. And the problem is, this is halfway through the first grazing window, and there's a green spot right there. There's literally nothing. April 2nd, there's not even that. And then the other window is late summer, and you can see this blue stem is already headed out, and that's probably 6 foot tall grass. Tons of biomass, but the quality is so low by this point that it's not very good food. So for the study, what we did was Egg Source Labs in Cambridge came out and collected samples 4 times a year, June, July, September, and November. I think the idea was beginning of the growing season, kind of the peak of growing season, roughly corn, and around harvest time. So far they've collected, Jim, I should say, thanks to Jim Fredericks and Casey Robinson, they've collected and analyzed about 100 samples so far. And then 80 or 90 next year. And thanks to Stefan and Megan for doing the statistical analysis on this too. So the 4 sites, we call this the main pasture. That's the original cattle grazing area on this farm. It's been perennial pasture for about 12 years. This is what we grazed last year. Each of these is a separate soil sampling point. This is where we grazed this year. This is where we'll graze next year. This we won't graze. And then this is, last year it was beans, this year it's corn. And we'll go back to I'm going to go through 100 years of farm history super fast. The point to take from this is that there are decades and decades of farm management that we can't change in 3 years worth of our management. Not to be pessimistic, but hopefully, we can benefit soil health in the long term by slowly, incrementally making these changes that compound through time. But we're fighting a lot of inertia in the system. Vic might be another person that this map, but this is Audubon County, Exira is over here. This particular farm is right about here, and there are schools everywhere. There's even a creamery right there, and there's a few houses, but there's definitely no schools or creameries, or there's a church right there too. 1930s, for reference, here's the farmstead. There's quite a bit of topography on this farm, but as you can see, big squares, they went right across the hills. And for reference again, here's the study points. You can start the next few maps, you can correlate where the points are with the field boundaries a little better. The dates don't show up. Okay, so this was the 30s, this is 40s. You can see they start to follow the contour a little bit. 50s, some of the field boundaries have changed as they've tried to adjust for natural waterways and other features. I think this is 60s, 70s, definitely following, there's a ridge right here, so they're definitely starting to follow the boundaries and the natural contours. Must be the 80s, I'm not sure. No, this is 70s, I think. These are the boundaries of the fields as they are today, so I think this is 70s or 80s, I'm not sure. So this is the main pasture. Let's see. It's kind of hard to guess on the dates. Part of this field up here where we did some of the grazed CRP and grazed CRP sites was actually CRP in the 90s. And then that was done in the late 90s. So otherwise everything else was cropped. This is 2006 or 7, and this is when what we call the main pasture was seeded down from crop ground into perennial pasture. And it was very similar in production to the other fields when it was crop ground. As pasture, it was very poor in the first few years. So it's a different soil type than some of these other sites, but in terms of production, it wasn't necessarily that much different. Here, there's one side on sorry. I can't tell you where exactly, but in 2011 is when Meg started to rotationally graze, and you can see a bunch of paddocks that start to show up in the pasture where she was moving cows in a much tighter rotation. And that was 2011. Okay, there it is. You can see where she's starting to more intentionally graze the cattle. Before that, they were just set stocked throughout this whole area, and they grazed it all summer. 2012, drought year, and we continued to carefully, rotationally, intensively manage the grazing in this field. This was 2015. This is when the CRP was reestablished. Pretty much all of this is CRP. It's about 100 acres. And then this was last year, 2018, in July. So what the lab analyzed was soil health score. There's 5 different things that go into that, 3 of which are carbon, nitrogen, and soil respiration. They take a soil sample, soak it in water, and then measure the amount of CO2 that comes off in 24 hours, and that's an indicator of the activity of the microbiology in the soil sample. Organic matter, nitrate, ammonia, and then pH. And I rank these in order by things that I think we can change in the short term, or that our management can change even in the maybe longer term. Soil health score, I think you can change pretty fast. Organic matter, pretty slow. pH, our management's not going to change that unless we add some lime. And all the crop ground, it's only ever had anhydrous ammonia, so the pH in some of the crop fields is extremely low. In 2018, we grazed. We didn't even bother grazing in the spring window because there was nothing out there. The second grazing window in late summer, we grazed for about 2 weeks. Just put a few bred heifers out there and a couple cows, and tons of forage, very low quality. The cows actually lost in condition. We got 19 animal days per acre. That's a measure of the amount of forage that we were able to utilize off that land. In contrast, most of our cool season perennial pasture produces 150. Some of those fields are well over 200 animal days per acre, so roughly a tenth of the production. And that's not because there wasn't biomass out there to graze, but because it was so far along in its maturity that it was not grazable. The rent ends up being a little cheaper actually than average county rent. So you can't complain about the price that much, but the dates are an issue. So if we could hit that in late May and early June, or early June, and then again in July, it would be much more beneficial, I think, for animals. And here's what it looked like when they were turned in. Here's what it looked like when they were done a couple weeks later. This is early on, but they had been in this piece for a while, and I think they were bedding down. They kind of got lost out there and kept coming back to this corner because it felt like a safe place, I guess. But otherwise, they did kind of mat this down, but otherwise guys, they really don't damage the native grasses. I don't think they take off the top foot maybe of forage, but tons of structure for birds still. This year we grazed roughly the same time frame, but with more animals on a little bit bigger area. We learned a lot from the previous year and supplemented some protein while they were out there. We put some flax meal and some alfalfa hay, and it still seemed like they were very short on protein. They were never content. Other than the first couple of days, they were excited, very, very excited at first, but then as the time period went on, you could tell they were just looking for anything else to eat. So next year we might try some yearlings that have a little bit lower protein requirements than lactating cows. We did much better on forage utilization. We got 37, roughly twice as much grazing out of that area. So we're starting to climb the learning curve. I think the animals also have a bit of a learning curve. The way they graze is totally different. With the cool season perennials, they graze with their tongues. They graze much lower, and they'll take it right down if you let them. With the natives, they're starting up high, so they kind of look like these giraffes reaching down. It's totally strange for them, probably too. Here's going in this year. Prairie looked great. It was a very nice. For only 4 years old, we were very happy with the CRP seeding. We really wish we could utilize it better. Yeah.
What was in that seed? I'm seeing some.
This is it's a high diversity. I forgot the NRCS CRP specific name of the program, but it's no, it's even more diverse.
25.
It wasn't a number. It was like a. Do you remember? Pheasant something. But it had 11 different native grasses. A couple of those, at least 1 or 2 were cool seasons, and then like 35 or 40 forbs. The seed was like $500 an acre. Crazy. And it's done very well. I think it had a good establishment and it's continued to do well. There's the calves lost in grass. Here's grazed on this side, ungrazed on this side. They really aren't utilizing much of that biomass that's out there. But I felt like that was as long as we could keep them in there without them either finding a way out of the fences or just completely losing condition. So, Solvita, that's the microbiological respiration indicator. The crop ground, it's not always statistically significant, but the crop ground both years in all sites, all samples, was always lower than everything else. Soil health score, that composite score that the lab computes, was always highest in the perennial pasture and always lowest in the crop field. When we compared just the grazed CRP and the ungrazed CRP, the soil health score in the grazed CRP was always higher. So we were showing exactly what we were hoping to show, but unfortunately, it's a complex study because there's different soil types that these were established on. This is Solvita, the CO2 respiration rate. This is June, July, either October or September, and then November. Beans or crop field on the left, and then this is grazed, the perennial pasture, and then ungrazed CRP. This pattern, other than this month right here, this pattern is roughly the same thing that we observed in all the soil health indicators in both years. Pasture is best, grazed CRP is next best, ungrazed CRP, and then the crop ground. This is average soil health score for both years, averaged across all the sites, all the dates for both years. According to Ag Source Labs, this is their scale. You median is anywhere from 10 to 29, with 20, anything greater than 20 is what they consider to be very good. So the main pasture is just over that very good score, so we're happy about that. Once again, the perennial pasture is the best, Grazed CRP, ungrazed CRP, and then the bean field. Not necessarily statistically significant, but that pattern is consistent. And then this is where there's some kind of confounding effects. The organic matter, even before the study started, was highest in the pasture and lowest in the crop field. What's interesting to me is that the pasture, I showed a picture when that was established in 2007, I think. Before that, it was just like the other crops, just like everything else, and probably between 2 and 3% organic matter. It's 4% right now, a little over 4. This crop field, most of the crop ground on this farm was conventionally tilled until Meg's dad took over in the 90s, early 90s, and then he was no-till, so it lost a lot of organic matter. There are also different soil types that these plots were established on. The crop field, 2.6% soil organic matter, CSR2 is 81. This is I'm not sure why that's so low. That soil type is loess, and there's a lot of clay in it, probably, I guess that's why. But that definitely could skew some of our other observations. So in conclusion, I think we need more time to observe the effects of some of this management change, possibly even more soil samples. We're not going to change things in 3 years dramatically. This is an incremental change that will hopefully compound over years and years, and then we can benefit in the long term from this. We need to do a little more statistical work to show, if we can, that the management is what's affecting these soil health indicators, hopefully more than just the soil type. It does seem that the perennials of any kind outperform the annuals in terms of soil health. In comparison to the animal days per acre that I reported for the Grazed CRP, which was 19 the first year, 39 the next year, Meg and I established our own native prairie 15-acre seeding in it's 3 years old. This is the first year we grazed it, and we already got 114 animal days per acre on it, and it's not a great seeding. But the reason we were able to get so much more grazing is because we grazed it at the right time. So we grazed it in May and then in July. So the real problem here is these regulations prevent good utilization. That's it.
So were you guys able to utilize like mock grading like every 12 hours?
The problem was these were big areas that didn't have any internal fences, so it was partly logistical. Part of it was the grass is this tall and you'd have to, either mow it or knock it down. And part of it is they didn't really know how to graze out there. They were wandering the whole area trying to find something to eat. So ideally we'd be able to move them multiple times a day. What I ended up doing was moving them, what I tried to do was move them once every 2 or 3 days. But they'd go through it so fast I'd have to move them once every day, pretty much.
Well, 2 things. So, one, the thing you were talking about the soil type being so different. I know that we're supposed to, like when we do our vegetable trials, we want to have comparisons that are right next to each other so we can minimize that. And so I was wondering if there's any possibility of any new sites that are like adjacent. So maybe that's just impossible. But the other thing I was wondering about, so you talked about this new prairie seeded that isn't in CRP that you are able to graze at the right time. Like, is there any way for that data to be incorporated? Aren't you trying to show that, like, that we could graze our CRP, if we were able to graze our CRP at the right time, it could have these good benefits, but like it wouldn't hurt our CRP. So I guess that's what I want to know. Can we see how that data would compare? Because I feel like that would be really valuable.
So you're asking if we could use our 15 acres of non-CRP native prairie as a control or some comparison. That's a great idea. we do have soil sampling points out there. So, yeah, ideal. Mark? We're halfway through a 10-year contract. We didn't have, I'm trying to remember, the first year we didn't have any calves out there. This year, we did have calves. They were past peak lactation. The cows were so, I don't remember. We did weigh them. I'd have to look that up. Yeah.
Just your observations, did you think that the pheasant habitat, which is what MRC is trying to protect, was any better or any worse between the ones that you said supporting their rules for the pheasants as what you did with your own prairie restoration, and did it make any difference to the pheasants?
Great question. Yeah. Okay. Do I have any indication or any observations of what our grazing according to NRCS regulations did to pheasant habitat versus on our land where we weren't constrained by those dates? This picture is our prairie, non-CRP natives. This is grazed in July right here. You'll notice a lot of what they actually eat is the foxtail, the warm season annual grasses, and they love those when they're immature. And they still don't touch much of the native stuff. I'm not a pheasant expert, but I sure think that having a diversity of structure would be beneficial for the birds. Some open areas, some trampled flat, but they're still tall cover. We didn't graze it hard, so.
My thought is, if we had established these rules because we need the pheasants to reproduce, which proves that pheasants are reproducing just fine, birds appropriately for the cattle, we might have.
Exactly, yeah. Bruce Carney did something like that and showed that, I don't know if you got into pheasants, it was native songbirds. Pheasants too, songbirds. But it was beneficial. I mean, at least it wasn't damaging, but in some cases it was actually beneficial.
Have you shared that with your NRCS? Does he know what's going on there?
Not yet. Megan worked really hard to get an exemption for this study so that we could graze in a different time window, but they said not even for research, so we didn't do that. But maybe after next year, if we can get some statistically significant results, we can show it to them. Okay.
Did you observe a difference in the cattle's grazing habits in the where you grazed it when it was supposed to versus the other?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a. Well, the question was, were there differences in the cattle grazing habits in the unconstrained grazing dates versus the CRP? When they were in our little non-CRP prairie, they grazed much more similarly to how they normally graze on our land. I think that's because they were able to graze. There's actually a lot of volunteer orchard grass out there as well. It probably seemed a lot more familiar to them. Whereas if it's 6 foot tall, extremely rank, those native grasses, some of those are actually hard to break off with their hand. They're so tough. I think that's a big learning curve for them.
I think they were able to balance their protein a little bit better too, having that mix of cool seasons and the natives in there. So they were able to balance their own diet, whereas in the CRP, it's pretty much all natives, all warm seasons, and all rank. So very low protein.
Did you? She said that protein in the CRP because there's just the warm season natives, which are low protein.
Are you looking at, I know this is not quite what you were looking at, but if you're trying to make an argument that you could graze the cattle and it's not going to impact the songbirds or the game birds, and then you want to maximize the quality of the feed, which has to do partly with time, but are you doing any analysis of the quality of those proteins at those different times, or do you already know that?
I know I've read the literature and the major prairie grasses, big blue stem, little blue stem, Indian grass, switchgrass. I think switchgrass is pretty coarse regardless, but the other three can be excellent cattle feed. And we took a sample last year, I believe, kind of a mix of the grasses that they had access to in early August, and the protein was very low.
But it would also get back to giving NRCS guidelines for the mix that they might be recommending, right?
Oh, sure. This was not at all, well, what we put in there, we tried to get the seed producer to focus more on the more palatable grasses. But the CRP seeding was meant to be as much of as close to a native prairie as possible, so high emphasis on diversity, not palatability.
Yeah, there's so much we have to learn about designing seed mixes, and CRP seed mixes have been really influenced by cost of seed, so we put in the amount of seeds per square foot, not based on biology or what you expect to come up, but relative cost, and that fluctuates with the market. So there's a lot that could be done. I think there's a lot that could be done to improve seed mixes or CRP if we knew we were going to grow.
Will NRCS let you do a short grazing period or cut of the study within their prohibited period?
Within the belt, they won't.
Because that, to me, that's really more of the question. Can I do a short grazing period, say, at the beginning or?
She went to the top of the state, I believe, NRCS, and got shut down. Nathan?
I heard this week, but I've yet to have confirmed that grazing, so mid-contract management in CRP, some of those practices are determined regionally. So sometimes it's up to regions to use certain practices. And I had heard that with a prescribed grazing plan on certain eligible CRP practices, that grazing might be allowed as a form of mid-contract management, which would allow you to graze in a managed fashion, in a management-intensive fashion during that nesting season, when your feed quality would be higher.
Yeah.
But I've yet to have anybody in the NRCS who's willing to put that down on paper and hand it to me. So, but the new CRP stuff just came out this week.
New regulations.
In the last 2 days.
Oh,
The new sign.
The new signups, but also some of the new rule just came out this week.
I'll look into that.
I haven't seen it all either.
Maybe you already changed the rule.
All right.
Well, as a person who planted a lot of prairie and didn't do NRCS, what is the economic, pros and cons of raising of just doing it on your own versus?
We had a fairly cheap mix because we focused on the grasses. We didn't put in the huge diversity of forbs that really raised the cost. So we were able to keep our costs down that way. In our case, ideally we'd have a prairie just for the sake of the prairie, but we also need to make money off of it. So we tried to focus on something grazable. The bad part for us was it took 3 years to even get to the point where we felt like we could graze it without damaging it. So it's very slow to establish. But that's kind of our drought reserve. We are very excited to have that 15 acres as hopefully an area that we can always count on in the middle of July and August as a place to graze in an emergency. $75. That depends on your annual, what they pay, but in our case. One more question.
Yeah. Did you see differences by animal that they were more inclined to graze it or not? And if so, would you ever select that for your breeding?
Great question. Were there differences between animals in grazing behavior, and could you select for adapted animals? Meg, do you have this issue?
I think each time we do this to them, they get a little bit better at it, and they become a little more efficient at harvesting the forages. I also think that as we raise up their offspring and they go in, so these calves are inside nursing, when they're following their mother around, they're watching how the mother is harvesting the forages, and then they pick it up. So the next year, I feel like everybody's a little bit better every time we do it. So hopefully we're going to be breeding smart cows or something. But I do think that they get better. The more they do it, the better they get at it.
Stefan, one more question.
All right, let George go.
All right. One of you guys.
Well, I was just thinking about the long-term stuff here. That seems to be, okay, you're seeing the best results in grazing perennial pasture, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you're measuring carbon in the system, organic matter, but also in the first test. And those are all better for grazing versus not grazing.
Correct. Not always statistically.
Not all, well, this is, so I'm thinking, you know, this is where we need, if we're gonna have long-term strategies for carbon, this is where this is so important, what you're doing. And it's making me think about, you know, well, I've had this practice of planting trees and shrubs on terraces for 40 years. And the NRCS always, nope, can't do it. Well, makes me want to go out and measure.
That's what we're here.
Because we need that data. What do the measurements tell us? For designing these long-term systems to address resiliency in climate.
I think
Well, that's my point.
grazing plus perennials is the best way to sequester carbon. I'd say.
Thanks, Dave.